Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Welcome to Seekers and Shifters. I am your host, Michelle Coyle, and I am here with my friend, Diana Pine. Do you want to say hi, Di?
Hello, beautiful people. I'm so glad to be here and see where this one goes today.
Well, start out by introducing yourself to our friends.
Oh, who am I today? I love this question. Well, if you love all the nerdy things, I have letters after my name. Undergrad in political science, criminal justice, master's in education, human sexuality, theology, PhD uploading in mind-body medicine and psychology. And at the end of the day, I'm just a soul having a human experience, trying to figure it all out in this flesh bag.
Sexy flesh bag. Listen, I thought it was weird that I went from a BA in political science to business school. You went from political science to what was that master's in?
Right? Yeah. So the journey of it for me, I think part of it was just that process of becoming, because I was so sick and tired of being told what to do and how to do it. And this is like the next phase of life. And it's more like, I don't want to do those things, or I got bored with those things. And it was more like, what do I want to do next? Or what was the lingering question from this space that I am bringing into this next phase of me? And so that continuously guided all of my searchings. And, growing up where I did, education was highly favored. And so more letters means more brains and bigger brains. And you keep going like that. But then I realized I was doing, and I didn't have that opportunity to figure out who I was. And once I started jumping into those realms of, okay, how am I as a human? What are the values that keep me whole? How do I want to serve the rest of this planet, and not feel like I'm selling my soul? That's when it was a game changer for me.
100%. This shifting from doing to being is a big theme on this show, mostly because it's a big theme for my life and it's my show. It's a big theme for middle age in general, and a lot of us having, the middle age spiritual awakening. I'm in the middle of writing a book about this. I might have just broke that news now, so now I actually have to do it. And so many of us, this happens, late 30s, early 40s or later. You really had this early. You're a prodigy.
I had it early in terms of a desire to want to know more, because I didn't get the whys growing up. It was like, you do this because you're told to do it, period, the end. Right? And it was very robotic. And it makes sense that in that linear thinking that if you do this, then you have to do that. Or because this is how I was raised, boom, military was the next option for me. But it kept perpetuating this, do what you're told. And I'm over here fuck the rules. I hate this shit. Or the biggest thing I hated about the experience was seeing people as numbers rather than human beings. And that was, whether you want to call it a breakdown or a breakthrough, but especially in my process of becoming, I saw all the layers of humanity and socialization and programming in that moment. And it was just so heavy. I couldn't do it anymore.
I love it. Listen, I wonder if you've had this experience too, because I feel like in a lot of my early life, all the way up through 30s was fuck the rules. I'm going to do it my way. And then lately it's been more, that rule was there for a reason. Maybe I shouldn't have dismissed that rule so quickly for all those. I don't know. Did you ever have that experience?
I resonate with what you're saying, mostly in terms of when I became a parent, some of the rules I started seeing the method behind the madness, but not quite the delivery, if that makes sense. So I grew up super right wing, ultra conservative, Christian fundamentalist, all the way over on that side of things. So in becoming a parent, I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And so there was a big part of me that wanted to unfuck the rules that were so fucked up and ingrained and embedded in me that it was fascinating and frustrating minding the gap. And it was mostly that gap between what I was taught and told versus where I wanted to be. And it was that space in between where I was trying to figure it out. And it's not like there was a guidebook. Yeah. But, you know, looking back at my life or like through some of those processes of becoming, I was like, okay, I see how this conservative rule might have protected me. Maybe I didn't get into some shenanigans that I would have, or, you know, I didn't end up addicted to anything or in jail. Like that kind of fear-based rule making, but it was more the rules of relationships and how to be in this world that I really wanted to unfuck. Like I didn't have to be this. I didn't have to do this next. I was so sick and tired of the rules.
You know, totally. I have a whole X podcast about queerness in business. And we talked a lot about that. It's called Queer Hustle. If anyone wants to look up what I was thinking about in 2020 and 2021, feel free. Go ahead. I probably said things that I wouldn't say now, you know, who knows? And it's fine. It's on the internet. It's fine. But during that period of time in my life, I was very into polyamory and relationship anarchy, and I was exploring all these things. I've come back to some more traditional relationship understanding just from having explored. Okay, I saw what that was like when I was trying to date anywhere from 3 to 7 people at the same time. It was exhausting. I got to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be monogamous again. And it's not this like, oh my God, monogamy is the only way to do things. But it was like, for me, I can see the value in this now in a way. Like I'm somebody, my mom would tell you, you've always had to learn things the hard way. Like I'm somebody who's like, go push up against shit and explore it and then go, oh, that's why monogamy. You know? Dating 7 people is hard.
You have a 3-line in your human design?
I don't fucking know. Listen, I don't have my human design memorized. I'll tell you what I do know about human design. And just obviously, I'm not an expert in this. We're going to have an expert on soon that I'm very excited about. Next week, actually, I'm recording with this expert. All I know about my human design is that I'm supposed to wait to be invited. And I fucking hate that. It's been a real growth area for me.
You know, that strategy of life to respond, you know, the first person that did a human design reading for me, let me quick tangent back and then I'll come right back. If you have a 3-line in your main makeup of human design, it basically means that first third of your life, you're going to fuck it up. And you have to, so that in your second phase of life, you can make it all make sense. And that's when you become almost like the teacher. Like you were the student and now you're teaching people how to do all the things. And then that third phase is when you're just like this super duper wise woman crone and everything goes amazing, right? So what I hear you saying is that might have been a part of your journey, but
I'm going for crone eventually. And I hope that you're correct, because if we do the math right, it means I'm going to live to be like 120 years old, which sounds great. So literally spent the first 40 years fucking it up. No, learning lots of things and doing lots of cool things. And also, you know, lots of lessons there. And, you know, we're still learning.
Yeah. But so like the first person who did my human design reading for me, I will say that they might not have been totally well versed in what it is that they knew, or they had their chart read. So they thought they could read a chart, and now they're certified and fantastic and spiritually malpracticing. And it was a whole freaking thing, because they told me that as a generator, only thing I could do in life was wait for the invitation or the call to respond. So I'm over here thinking like I need to hang out in a cave, close the door, and wait on somebody to magically find me in my cave, bash through the doors, all the way through the walls, and knock, knock, knock. Hey, can you do this thing? But what the fuck? That doesn't even make sense. And that's not even the way that works. But all that being said, there are so many beautiful ways to try to understand your human experience. And there's so many ways that some people call themselves professionals, but they're not. But there's ways that people can fuck it up for you, when at its purest intention, it's to help guide you towards the best possible path. And what it really means is, I want to be invited because I want to be seen, heard, and validated. And you know what? I can resource my own invitations because I need to respond to life. So, Michelle, the best way to do this for you, if that's a part of it, is go talk to weird people, go people watching, listen to a podcast, and then you'll be like, oh, I need to respond to this. I need an invitation to do this thing. But here, you've created it for yourself. It relies on you.
I look at me talking to weird people. And you know what? I got to say, because I'm a projector, not a generator, and I still got that waiting to be invited. I don't know. We'll talk to the expert next week. We'll find out what, but the way that that it was explained to me was like, this is going to sound really arrogant, but I didn't say this about myself. Somebody else told me this. It was like, your energy is so powerful that if you don't wait to be invited, you overpower people. I may have had that experience once or twice, where people felt a little overpowered or intimidated when I just inserted myself. So it's like, cool, chill. And then, you know, when somebody wants to hear what you say, then I can come out and say something, you know, that I want to say, and it'll be received in a helpful way instead of.
Yeah. Yeah. And whether it's like seeing the power within you, like I saw how powerful you were the first time that I met you. And I was like, oh, not only does she live close by, but she's fantastic. She knows what she's after. She's like, no bullshit. She's to the point like, we're going to be friends in this life. Yeah. And that just goes to, you know, whether it's human design, numerology, astrology, or some book that you picked up when you're going to the bathroom, who knows? Like whatever grounds you, centers you, and keeps you whole, amazing. Do the thing. Take what you need out of it and leave the rest, because there's going to be some bullshit along the way that tries to cling on to you to tell you who you are. And it's stupid.
Yeah. My good friend Kanisha, and I hope she's listening to this since I'm referencing her, but she has this concept of put on your hazmat suit, get in, take what you need, leave the rest. Like you don't have to absorb everything about everything. It's okay to just take what's good for you. And I love that visual of like, just get the hazmat suit on, get what you need, get out.
You know, there are so many things that, whether it's shiny and squirrel or things like people who come into our life and just become like an energy vampire of sorts, you know, the more or the further we are away from who we are in that seeking of life, the further we'll ever be from purpose and peace and understanding. So, you know, however we define this thing, or we're trying to figure it out, like, can you sleep okay at night? That's what we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah. Where's the peace, the inner peace, right? And it's so cliche, but that's what it's about, right? And you're talking about spiritual malpractice. I won't go so far, but I will say an experienced coach or guide or healer versus somebody who's newer. One of the differences is an experienced guide will lead with curiosity. They know it's about somebody coming to their own conclusions. We know when we work with people, nothing that we, you know, want for them matters. It's what they want for themselves and what they are going to guide themselves to. And you're just kind of a facilitator, almost like a little pinball machine, just helping them kind of stay in the right lane. Versus when you're newer at it, maybe you're kind of like, I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm going to tell you what you should do. It's like, no. We're actually trying to teach people to listen to themselves and their own, and eventually, you know, higher self and their own inner guidance, right?
You know, it's interesting you say that. Like, so I've been in business for myself for 7 years, and the first 6 years I did it all online. I just opened a brand new brick and mortar spot, opened as of April 1st. So we're not even like 90 days into the madness yet. So thank you. So if you're ever near the Delaware beaches, I'm down here in Lewis, Delaware. But I have a big studio in my space, and I've opened it up for other healers or practitioners in the healing arts to kind of have space, because I got a big space and I don't have that. I got kids. Like, I'm not going to be here 24/7 doing the damn thing. So I had somebody come in who must have been very new in their journey. And they're like, you need to do this and you need to do this for this like group setting. And I'm over here like, I don't need to do shit.
Yeah. I don't like rules. So go fuck yourself.
You know what? I will do it because I choose to.
You listen, I've had to work on receiving and that includes receiving of unsolicited advice sometimes, you know, and it's like I get it sometimes. And one of my flaws, I'm a high D if you're a disc person, is I'm just like, yes, I know. And my brain moves really fast and I feel like I already know somebody's going to say or what they're going to do. And even like when they're giving me good advice, I'm just like, I know, I already tried that. And here I won't work, you know, and I have to catch myself and listen, because no matter what somebody's saying, Even if 95% of it I know or I've done before, there's going to be a little nugget in there that's like a way that I've thought of it, that's a little different or something. There's something to get from everything.
Yeah. Once upon a time, I was a lot like that, but like outwardly so. And it was probably more when I was in the political realms of things. And so imagine that, right? So at the time, I was working with a partnership between the military and Homeland Security, working with their defense support with civilian authorities. So let's say there was some natural disaster or terrorist thing, whatever happened, to rally all of the civilians to action alongside the military support. So it wasn't a clusterfuck of things trying to get figured out, kind of like after 9/11. There was a whole bunch of people that zoomed to New York City to help. And we got people over in New York City saying they need a bus and they need a bus and they need a bus. And here comes Honky Tonk from Indiana sending in the yellow buses to do whatever they're doing. And New York needs an ambulance. And so like not just like working on the common language, but figuring out actual planning and things to do that. But I had a lot of degrees. I was working with like the highest ranking of high people, and they were looking at me like, how is she so young? And how is she here? Oh, it was kind of smart. That's why. But, somebody said to me, cause I was getting kind of frustrated. I'm like, we've done this before. I know this stuff. Like, why am I in this space? And they said, Dana, I'm going to challenge you for a moment. If you're open to it. I said, go for it. Please tell me something I don't know. They said, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you should leave. And I got offended by it at first because I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are? But then they were like, but see beyond the words. If you're not willing to learn anything, you won't learn anything, and you're wasting not only your time, but you're taking up space from people who might really want to learn. And that was such an amazing piece of feedback for me at that point in my life. This is before any spiritual, awakenings and like realizing, all the beautiful things in life. But I have taken that with me everywhere I go because I never want to stop learning. And I don't want to be unapproachable or arrogant or like elitist in how I am. I want to be approachable in the ways that I show up to this world. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any clients and nobody want to work with me.
Right. Nobody wants to talk to anybody who doesn't have anything to learn. Right. And when we're building relationships with people, it's like the least pleasant conversation I can think of, to just think of somebody who already knows everything. And it does not, to me, it does not reflect a leader or a lot of emotional maturity when somebody already knows it, right? It's like, I know somebody's an expert when they say like, I don't know about that.
Giving myself permission to not know was pivotal. And that was probably about the same time. And that was like 15 years ago? Like it was almost a lifetime ago, in all the phases of whatever's going on in the world. But it's interesting, the different paths and the different tangents that take you in different places or to meet different things or to learn new concepts. Like, I love when there's like a redirect. Was there ever a thing for you that somebody said that was just so powerful? You're like, dude, I'm using that everywhere now.
Yeah. And sometimes it comes in the form of that really harsh feedback. Like that's especially younger me, like sometimes needed it to be a little stingy to really hear it. Right. I had an early on boss say to me, because I came, it's not right to say fresh off the boat from Oklahoma, but whatever. Like I was from Oklahoma and I was in DC and I was like, the culture was different. Okay. I actually came from Texas. I went to school in Texas. I came to DC and I was in that culture, and this culture is very different. And I was just prattling on to whoever would listen. And like, cause that's what we're like back where I'm from. It's like, you just talk to you talk to the person checking you out at the store, and you talk to I would always warn people when I take them back to Oklahoma, like, we're going to know about the waitress's divorce. Like, we're going to know everything that's going on with everybody. It's just a real open card. And I get to DC and I'm being like this. And my boss said, Michelle, shut up until you know what to say. And I'm like 22. I was like, best fucking advice I've ever gotten in my entire life. It's up there. I mean, like, it's in the top 10. Okay. Shut the fuck up sometimes and listen.
So much growth happens in those places and spaces of listening. And it's not just with client work or life work or love work, but like really quieting the outside or even the inside in the brain to just stop worrying about what you have to do next allows you to be so much more present.
It's interesting and ironic that the majority of my job now is listening, whether it's in this context or really as a coach, right? Or even like when you're selling stuff, we know that you talk 10% of the time and listen 90% of the time.
It's fascinating when new clients, like especially couples that come to me, and usually it's about communication or somebody's not listening, somebody's not doing a thing. And, so from spiral world, there's a lot more assumptions method to the madness, like theory, we could call it in present day spiral. It used to be that there was only 3. And one of them was how you do one thing is how you're going to do everything. It's a little softer now with understanding, but bringing that concept to people, they're like, well, I don't do that. I don't talk over her. I don't do these things. Well, you're doing it to me. How's that going for you in your relationship? Or you're talking so poorly about your partner right now. Like, how is it that you have space to love them if you're just going to have that much spewage of ick? Like, that doesn't feed a happy, healthy, loving relationship. It doesn't.
No. And it's sometimes you're asking the question, but you are having to like give feedback in the question. And I've had to learn how to approach that differently with different types of people, because sometimes some people need to hear it harshly, kind of like I did as a young person. And some people I need to just be like, may I reflect to you what I just heard just now? Would that be okay? We've got to come in real soft.
I believe that you have that within you. I've not seen that side of you.
I do. Thank you. And I bring it out when I need to, right? We have different tools for different situations. Like, I don't think you've needed that side of me, right?
Oh, fair.
It comes out more with men. Actually, let's get into this because this is fucking fascinating and controversial, maybe. Masculine, feminine. I know that you have a lot to say about this and have a lot of expertise in this area. I will say it's certainly been a growth area for me, kind of learning how to be in my feminine. And I want to frame it for people watching and listening, right? Because this is not actually about gender. And I think that's what makes it like triggering and offensive is people are like, oh my God, like we're not saying women are this and men are this, or even that gender is binary, any of that shit, right? We're saying that there's a duality in this energy, and that for all of us, it's about harmonizing and balancing this energy. People who were born male, born female tend to be socialized in these different ways. But for a lot of women, we're still socialized very masculine. If you've been in the corporate world, if you've been in the political world, if you've been in, as in the entrepreneur world, it's all very masculine. And so for a lot of us, right, we're learning how to come back into feminine. And it is very feminine communication to say, hey, may I share how I'm feeling right now? I'm more likely to drop into that if I were, say, talking to a very masculine man who was talking over me or who was doing that. If I respond to him in kind and I try to be masculine back, the conversation isn't going to go anywhere. We call this bucks in a valley. It's like we're just hitting and we're just getting pissed off and it's escalating, right? Because I'm trying to like outman this dude who's clearly, maybe insecure about his own masculinity, why he's coming so masculine as well. It's going to go way better if I respond to him in a feminine way or with a softness. Whereas with a woman who's comfortable in her feminine, it may be easier for me to just naturally come a little more masculine, right? I don't know. Tell me what you think about any of that or all of it.
Yeah, man, so many entry points on that. But yes, to re-emphasize what you're saying, it's not about dangly bits. It's not about parts and place and space. It's about the energy that you hold within you. And while those in gender equality worlds will say that it's not linear, it's more of a spectrum. Awesome. We're going to look at the opposite sides of this just for an example. It doesn't mean that that's the way that it always is. And in the whole spectrum of it all, like, I always talk to my clients about the masculine and feminine energy in terms of dance, because most people have scrolled through something in their doom scrolling and seen the professional ballroom dancers, right? And the masculine in its energy holds the container, It puts the frame together. It has the foundation. It aligns the posture, and it does things to hold the space. And then you add the feminine energy to come and to spin and to be wild and in the wonder, and then to just create, and then just to do all the things and happiness and joy and bubbly and fun and softness and just like to be led. And when we hold that within ourselves, we don't need nobody, no rules, and no thing that get in the way. But it's interesting when you're talking about, meeting at that Bucks in a Valley point, because there are some people who do not realize how toxic they have gone in a polarity until they are met with the same mirrored language. Like, you can't tell me I said this thing. I just said the exact same thing that you did. It's just that I have different dangly bits. So you're thinking, I need to act a different way. I need to say a different way. I need to do a thing. And that's not it at all. But man, talking about, especially corporate world, it's still very, very patriarchal in the way that it's set up. I love that there have been more women stepping up. And again, not about dangly bits. It's the energy that they bring. Like, I can be feminine and I can get this done. I don't need to be, military drill sergeant, hand in your face to make this thing happen. I can stand back and watch the dance and let it happen. And watching people figure it out rather than directing how it goes is sometimes an even more magical and beautiful experience.
Yeah, we can be creative and we can be collaborative and we can be consensual in our communication. And we can, and sometimes there's a lot more power in silence, a lot more power in an emotional reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And, being socialized as in a more masculine sense, depending on how our parents raised us to be, or what is it that we were taught and told to be, as we were growing up. I think there's a lot of, programming that gets instilled by our parents at different ages, and, we're both in our 40s. There's something about the era that raised us that it was still very gendered specific about the dangly bits. And if you have these parts, you do these jobs. If you have those parts, you stay at home, you cook, and you make babies. That's all that being passed down generationally. I think our generation has been so cracked wide open to realize that we can do everything that we want. And it is almost, that bucks the system in terms of like, this isn't how it's supposed to be, but I'll hold space for it.
Well, what's interesting too about the timing of our generation is like being a little girl in the 80s, coming from parents who went through women's lib and who burned their bras and things like that. It was the first maybe generation where we were actually told the opposite. The way I was raised was, and I'm an only child, right? But as an only girl, you can do anything you want. You could be a scientist. You can be a doctor, almost like overkill with it. Like you can and if you look back at even like the Lego ads from that time, everyone's in neutral colors and they're all playing with the Legos. And even now it's like the girls are in pink and they're like that went back into a polarity that wasn't there when we were growing up. It was like almost this free to be you and me kind of era. And the way I was raised by a single mother was very much like never depend on a man and, be hyper independent. And I went that way. And so a lot of the work that I'm done and am doing is coming. It's okay to be interdependent with other people. It's okay to let somebody else be in charge sometimes of something. It doesn't mean your whole life's going to fall apart if you let this other smart person be in charge for a day. That's all right.
And I was raised the exact opposite. So I was always pushed towards relationship, that a man completed me, that all I needed to be was pretty or smart, but I couldn't be both. I never felt pretty all the time. So I was like, I'm going to get all the letters after my name so I can do smart all the time. Right. And then, right. So then I knew that I was gay when I was 12 years old. You'll giggle about this one. I don't know if you remember the movie, early 90s. It was called American Presidents. And my mom thought we were going to go watch some super Republican movie about the American presidents. And we get there and the president has to leave the White House and go somewhere because I think it's a national security disaster or whatever, but they end up in this parade with the Dykes on Bikes motorcycle club. Right. So then I'm like, my people. And my mom's like, no, you can't. So, in the closet, I went thinking, that this compulsory heteronormativity was like the only way that I could have love, be love, receive love, and not get kicked out of the family, not kicked out of the church, not get kicked out of any kind of thing in society I ever wanted to be, because it had to be the soft and the submissive and the receiving. And it wasn't about anything other than that was my gender role, and breaking those chains. Oh, girl. It probably took me from the moment that I realized that fuck all those rules and fuck that religion that was just so oppressive and high demand. It probably took me 10 years to be like, okay, this is not okay. And this is not for me. But man, those high demand religions, they'll get you.
It's interesting. It's like so many of the people that I meet, that I met in the polyamorous space, that I meet in the personal growth and development space, like a lot of people that just go weird in one way or another. It's a reflection off of, or a reaction to, like you said, like high control groups, high demand groups. But like one of the things that was so mind blowing to me when I first learned NLP and learned about like values levels and colors levels, which we also study in Spiral, was this thought of like the blue meme, which is very authoritarian, very rule driven. And I was reading this, and at first I was like, oh yeah, that's the conservatives. And they were giving examples like the Catholic Church and the military. And like, these are very rule driven organizations. They're very blue. But then I started to think about all my friends, the woke folk. And I was like, these motherfuckers are blue too.
I joined a really, really left-wing thing, once I kind of came out and came into my own skin. But I think what was so eye-opening for me, kind of like that moment for you, was realizing there's just as much crazy on the radical right as there is on the radical left. And behind the scenes and the emotions and the vibrations behind all that, it's basically the same.
Yeah, it's a circle, right? And it's like if centrist is at the top of the circle, we know this from our political backgrounds, but it goes all the way down on the left and the right, and then it joins back here in an authoritarian place. And there's authoritarian left, like what we saw in, Venezuela. There's authoritarian right, like, and it we go socialist, we go communist, like it goes both ways, and we go fascist on this side, socialist, communist on this side. It comes back to an authority meme. And it's so interesting because it's like, these are the rules. And if you break the rules, you're shunned, or killed, or you're outside of things. And I just realized, gosh, I don't want to be any of that. And what happens then is the rebel thing to do is to come back to the center. It's so fucking ironic.
Yeah. And it's amazing in that, of all of the paths and ways that people have gone, super feminine, super masculine, toxic feminine is a thing. Toxic masculine is a thing. Toxic happiness is a thing. Toxic sadness is a thing. Like, there, as above, so below, so within, so without. Like, it's all on that spectrum of things. Like, there's even toxic masculinity in lesbo land over here. I'm not kidding, Michelle. It is impressive.
I've seen it once or twice. I do want to ask you, because we hear about toxic masculinity constantly. Of course, we all kind of have a concept of that. Tell us about toxic femininity. What's that like?
Oh, that's a fun one. So, it's kind of that same. Like in toxic masculinity, it's the mansplaining. In toxic femininity, like that there is no wrong, or you can't speak over me, or there's nothing I can possibly learn from you. It's that you can't do this thing because you're a man, or you can't do this thing. It's kind of exactly the same. Like, I don't know how to, like, I could pull out a chart and be like, yep, this is it, and this is it, and this is it. But it'd be the same no matter what the heading of the worksheet is. Like, it is just as toxic on both sides. But that, I think the toxicity is that it does not hold space for any other.
Right. And the toxicity comes in the polarity. And while the polarity is really interesting to study, I think the reason it feels triggering to a lot of folks is like it's prescriptive, like you have to be this way, especially if this is your, like you said, matches your dangly bit or your tucked in bits, like whatever bits you got, matches your bits. And coming to balance is the important thing, right? Like, I think what a concept that's really helped me start to get into my femininity more was this concept that I could call on my masculinity anytime I needed, and I didn't have to always have it here. That was mind blowing for me. It's not like, oh, I have to be in this protected masculine all the time just in case something comes at me. It's like, no, that's in there. And I know how to take care of myself if I need to. If I'm in a situation that feels dangerous or unsafe, I know how to set a boundary. I know how to take control. I know how to get myself out. I know how to speak my mind. And because I know how to do that, and I can bring that up anytime I want to, it doesn't have to be present 100% of the time. I can actually relax. And if I need it, it's there.
I think what you said was like the key part of it, that you could call on it at any time to show up for you. And there's so many people in the world, and we'll say that it is more masculine in space. There was a religious book once upon a time written that said that men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. I don't recommend it. There are concepts that but in terms of men like things structured and in this little box, and women are a little bit all over the place and tentacly in their spaghettiness. But there are ways that the box and the holding serves. And I think there's so many people that don't think that they can be both of anything. Like seriously, Michelle, once upon a time this was like during COVID when everybody needed something to enliven the interwebs with all the boring stuff that they were doing. I hosted a week-long series of different things that were like quippy and catchy and like they made you kind of like frightened. But one of my classes was called Chocolate Chips and Anal Beads. But it was talking about the dualities of life and the pluralities of things, that we can be more than one thing at a time. We can call on the masculine and the femininity at all times. We can bake the chocolate chip cookies, and we can be wild, freaky, fun behind closed doors when the kids go to bed. Like, we don't have to choose one thing and stick to it. We get to dance with it whenever it is that we need it. We can call on it when we need it. We can ask it to sit down when we don't. And kind of what you were saying, like you had to find a place where you were like accessing femininity and like go into that softer space for you. It was fascinating to me when I left the military, because I was so much in that toxic space of just do and go. And this is how it goes. Like it was a posture change. What's the quote from G.I. Jane? Like, she looked like the wife of a Russian beet farmer. I think was the quotes from it. But I was just so in that masculine space of being, and I was so sick of the rigidity, and it hurt my muscles, and it hurt my posture, and it hurt my heart, like to just do this all the time, because it was just taking me further and further away from who I was. And the first person I found who brought me to the spiral, she was just like super soft and hello, friends. And as we were talking, she just always was in this soft and quiet, super embodied voice. And I'm like, I don't want to go to that extreme, but I'm sick of wearing this cloak of invisibility that this masculinity made me strong, and I get stuff done, and I could make all the money I wanted to. I made my first 6 figures when I was 21 years old. Like there was like this mindset that gets shit done. And while that's amazing, I could still hold that in a feminine space. But until I was able to see that it wasn't just a duality, it was a plurality. And there was so many more things to life than just being one box at a time. I could be spaghetti too.
Well, and you already are. Recurring theme on this show. You already are. It's about unlayering yourself, unburdening yourself from the things that get put on. I was just on another episode, and we were talking about self-love and loving yourself. And I was thinking about how when you're a little kid, nobody's told you that's wrong yet, right? And so a little kid, they'll come out and they'll be like, I'm so smart and I'm so good. And sometimes people are like, yeah, you are. But more often than not, especially people our age, what happens? I'm so smart. You're not allowed to say that. That's not a nice thing people say. We don't talk about how smart we are. We don't talk about how pretty we are. Oh, it's not okay for me to say that to other people. And then the message you internalize, oh, it's not okay for me to think that about myself. That makes me arrogant. That makes me conceited, especially as somebody socialized as a woman, right? I'm supposed to be modest. I got red hair and giant tits, Diana.
You do have giant tits. I know.
I do. And it's funny. Like, I'm so sorry if my son is listening to this, either of my sons. Probably more likely the older. But like, there was a day you'll laugh at this. I had this experience one time, and I'm a bisexual, a raging bisexual. I had an experience one time, maybe 10 years ago, where I saw a woman and she had red hair and big boobs and curvy body. And I saw her out the corner of my eye and I just thought about sex. And then I was like, that's what I look like. And that's what people think about when they see me. Like, this explains so much about my fucking experience in life, right? And I had to get okay with that, because when I was younger, it was like, but I'm more than that, but I'm smart. And it was like smart is better than sexy.
Well, that whole breaking that with that concept when I was younger, that I could be pretty or I could be smart, was really hard, because, there are times that I am not completely unfortunate looking and I got it and I look amazing. And other times I look like a bridge troll. Like, let's be honest. Like, I got those days and I'm like, my wifey dearest, like, oh, I'm so beautiful, right? I'm just like, tell me you love me.
Listen, it wasn't until Michelle's mid-30s that she realized that other people thought about sex when they looked at her, and like she had to get okay with that, And just when I got okay with it, it's starting to change because I'm middle-aged. God damn it.
Girl, your hips just got wider. It's all good.
I just get sexier and sexier. My clothes definitely get sexier the more weight I gain. So, you know what I mean? I didn't gain weight. My clothes just got sexier. I don't know what you're talking about. But this thought of like, smart is better than sexy. And so I need to tell them how smart and I show them how smart I am, so they won't think about how instead of being like, it's cool to be all of it. And by the way, it's fucking fabulous to be all of it. And it doesn't make me arrogant or conceited to just kind of realize, hey, this is how other people perceive me.
I worked as a chaplain one time at a children's hospital as part of my seminary journey and all of the letters after my name. But I had one of the older gentlemen who was also a chaplain come up to me one day, and I normally wore like full armed clothing, just because tattoos in different spaces can be off-putting, and especially in a convalescent and caring kind of space. I don't want to take up more space than they do, so I can hold more space for them. But I must have like pushed up my sleeves one day, and he was like, why did you do all of that to yourself? Are you trying to hide or make it harder so people can't see you? And it took me a moment, and I sat with it probably for a year before I had a good answer behind it. But I was like, I'm not hiding from shit. But ultimately, like, as I dove into like the subconscious reasonings of it, like, I wanted to be difficult to understand. I wanted somebody to see beyond the skin, beyond the big boobs and the big, the red hair, to see me as a human being. So if that meant tattoos, crazy hair, military, whatever, like, could they still see my soul?
We were trying to be different when we got these tattoos, and then everyone our age went and got these tattoos. At least all the liberals did. And so now we don't look different at all. We actually just all look like each other. God damn it. Backfire. Just decorating our temple. Why I got these? I had some others that weren't visible. For the longest time, it was, I had that rule for myself of like nothing visible, so that I can be professional and I don't have to, and then I was in my late 30s, and I started making a lot of money. And people started to treat me or to assume that I had come from money, because there were a lot of people who feel like the only way that you could ever possibly make money is if you came from money. And I didn't. And it bothered me. And I was like, no, motherfuckers, like, I'm from the trailer, and like, y'all need to know. I need to show who I am. I got a skull, it was like, I still love this skull, but I love her. But yeah, and I got like the black jack, like these, like the whitest trash, and I can say white trash because I'm from white trash and I am white trash. Like, it's okay to say it if you aren't. But I needed to show that part of me and like where I came from, and I don't regret it. I love my tattoos. I think they're beautiful, and I can cover them if I want to cover them.
Even in the skull, there's a rose. Like, the darkness is always met with the light, or it's all just a part of the journey.
It's all just a part of the journey. All right, we got to wrap up. We could talk for hours, and we should do this again because we have so much podcast chemistry. I love it.
Yes.
And thank you for having me on your podcast. Tell us about your podcast. Plug.
Right. So, launching July 8th, depending on when this is released, you might already be ready to hear the first few episodes of Get Naked with Me, a podcast committed to, stop wearing the weight of the world. Like there's too much bullshit you don't need. And, there's conversation, witty banter, and I bring in other practitioners just committed to authenticity and guiding people along the way. And then if you want to work with me, we can talk about sexuality and the adaptive Kama Sutra, if there's any wounds, illnesses, or injuries that come along with it, or just how to be so on fire that it's, like full fuck yes energy.
Love it. And where can we find you on the internet?
Yep. Diadem, like a crown, diademmedicine.com.
Beautiful. And we'll have it in the show notes as well for you. Di Pine, thank you so much for being with us today. Much love to you. And thank you all for listening. And we will see you guys next time.